In 1995, a fire broke out at the factory. In 2002, a hidden door found during demolition changed everything. When the sirens stopped wailing, no one believed Sarah Miller. Her mother, Linda, was only 34 years old. In the industrial district of Detroit, in a small textile factory, she had been working the night shift like any other night. She never came home. At that moment, Sarah didn't know that the answers she would search for over 7 years would be hidden behind a wall marked emergency exit. When everyone accepted the official story, only she would refuse to give up. 8 workers had died in the flames that night. Experienced seamstress Linda, young trainee Jessica, veteran supervisor Robert, all in the same fire. There were screams, there was smoke, there was chaos, but no explanation why they couldn't escape. This story isn't just about a factory fire. This is the story of how corporate greed can turn workplace safety into a death trap. And sometimes, the truth is locked away so tightly that it takes decades to find the key. But remember, this isn't just another industrial accident story. This is about real people who went to work that night, expecting to return home to their families. 8 mothers, fathers, daughters, and sons who never got that chance. And worse, they would discover it wasn't an accident at all. November 12, 1995, Detroit's industrial district buzzes with late-night activity. Linda Miller kisses her 12-year-old daughter Sarah goodbye. "Mom, will you help me with my math homework tomorrow?" asks Sarah. Linda smiles. "Of course, sweetie. We'll tackle those fractions together." 10:45 p.m. Linda arrives at Morrison Textile Factory for the night shift. The factory produces clothing for major department stores, operating 24/7 to meet holiday season demands. 8 workers are scheduled for the overnight crew. According to fire department records, outside temperature was 28 degrees Fahrenheit that night. Security guard Tom Wilson checks workers in. Linda Miller, Jessica Adams, Robert Chen, Maria Santos, David Park, Amy Johnson, Carlos Rodriguez, and shift supervisor Frank Thompson. 11:30 p.m. Workers spread across 3 floors, cutting room on first floor, sewing machines on second, finishing and packing on third. The building, constructed in 1967, had narrow hallways and limited exits. 2:17 a.m. Fire starts on the second floor near electrical panels. According to the official report, faulty wiring caused sparks that ignited fabric scraps. By 2:25 a.m., flames spread rapidly through the building. Polyester and cotton materials created thick, toxic smoke. The first 911 call comes from a passing truck driver who sees flames through windows. 2:31 a.m. Detroit Fire Department arrives. Captain James Morrison, no relation to the factory owner, leads the response team. They find the main entrance blocked by flames and smoke. By 3:45 a.m., the fire is contained. But the devastating discovery awaits inside. 8 bodies found in different locations, all appearing to have died from smoke inhalation while trying to find exits. The official report states, victims became disoriented by smoke and couldn't locate emergency exits in time. But allegedly, that night, a maintenance worker named Pete Sullivan told investigators he heard pounding and screaming from inside, but couldn't locate where the sounds were coming from, as if people were trapped behind walls they couldn't break through. 7 years pass. 2002. Sarah is now 19 years old, working as a firefighter trainee in Detroit, inspired by the tragedy that took her mother. Every November 12th, she visits the empty lot where Morrison Textile Factory once stood. Over the years, questions haunted her mind. Why couldn't experienced workers find the exits? Why were all victims found in the same corridor area? Why was the factory demolished so quickly after the fire? That morning, important news arrives. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration announces the formation of a special task force to investigate industrial fires from the 1990s, following recent discoveries of safety violations at historical accident sites nationwide. Sarah's hope revives with this announcement. The Morrison factory fire fits the task force criteria perfectly: unexplained casualties in a workplace fire with questionable safety documentation. She starts examining old fire department files. She requests 1995 records from Detroit Fire Department archives. She studies building permits and safety inspection reports from that period. First oddity: factory blueprints show 3 emergency exits on each floor, but fire damage assessment only mentions finding 2 exit routes. Second oddity: the workers' compensation insurance claim was processed unusually quickly, paid out within 30 days, when typical processing takes 3 to 6 months. Third oddity, building demolition began just 2 weeks after the fire, despite ongoing OSHA investigation. Sarah's fire safety training raises red flags. In a properly evacuated building fire, workers should have multiple escape routes and sufficient time to exit. After weeks of internal debate, Sarah decides to act. She files a formal request with OSHA's new task force, providing her analysis of the Morrison Factory case and requesting it be included in their systematic review of 1990s industrial fires. 6 weeks later, her phone rings with news that will change everything. "Hello, is this Sarah Miller? I'm Jake Harrison, OSHA Safety Inspector with the Industrial Fire Task Force. We've reviewed your submission about the Morrison Textile Factory case. Based on your analysis and similar patterns we're seeing in other cities, we've prioritized this case for full investigation. We'd like you to participate as a consulting firefighter when we examine the site." 3 weeks later, Sarah arrives at the old factory site as part of the official OSHA Task Force investigation. Jake Harrison meets her, wearing OSHA identification and leading a team of structural engineers, safety specialists, and forensic experts. "Sarah, your submission helped us recognize this case as part of a potential pattern. We've been conducting systematic excavation of the foundation area." Jake leads Sarah to the investigation site, where the OSHA team has been working for 2 weeks. Using ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation, they've uncovered sections of the old factory's basement level that survived the fire. "What we found validates your concerns," Jake explains, showing her a carefully excavated door marked emergency exit, but sealed shut with welded metal bars. "This violates every safety code that existed in 1995, Jake continues. "But more importantly, we found evidence that this welding was done before the fire, not as part of cleanup afterward. The methodical investigation has uncovered more than just the door." Sarah examines the systematic documentation, photographs, measurements, metallurgical analysis of the welds. Jake shows her another crucial discovery. "We also located archived testimony from the original investigation that was apparently overlooked. A firefighter named Captain James Calder gave a statement in 1995 describing unusual circumstances. He hands her a typed report from the Detroit Fire Department archives. Captain Morrison's statement reads, "Upon arrival, standard procedure would be to identify all emergency exits. However, during our search, we discovered what appeared to be exit doors that were inaccessible from the interior side. At the time, we attributed this to fire damage and structural collapse." Sarah's firefighter training helps her understand the significance. "So Captain Calder noticed something was wrong, but it was dismissed as fire damage." "Exactly. And here's what concerns our task force most. We've requested similar archived reports from Chicago and Phoenix. Initial reviews suggest comparable statements from firefighters in those cities, describing blocked exits that seemed inconsistent with natural fire damage patterns." Sarah examines the archived firefighter testimony more closely. The 1995 report continues. "Standard emergency exit protocols were not followed by factory management during the incident. Despite our requests for building schematics showing all exits, we were told by factory representatives that some exits were temporarily unavailable due to security concerns. This delayed our rescue efforts significantly." Jake shows her additional evidence from their systematic investigation. "We've also recovered factory maintenance logs from the week before the fire. These were preserved in a fireproof filing cabinet in the basement office area. The maintenance logs show entries for security modifications to south exit dated 3 days before the fire, with payment authorization to an outside contractor listed only as VC Security Services." Sarah examines the insurance policy documentation found in the same files. The factory was insured for $2.3 million, substantially higher than comparable factories. There's also a supplementary policy with unusual clauses about enhanced compensation for workplace fatalities. Jake explains their most concerning finding. "Our task force has now identified what appear to be similar safety violations in the Chicago and Phoenix cases. However, each case seems to involve different circumstances and potentially different perpetrators. The Detroit case may represent a unique local fraud scheme." But Jake's expression changes. "Sarah, there's something else. Michael Morrison, the current company owner, he's been calling OSHA asking about our inspection findings. And yesterday, someone attempted to break into our evidence storage facility. Security caught them before anything was taken, but..." Sarah's blood runs cold. "You mean he knows what we found? I'm not sure it's him directly, but someone doesn't want this information public. And Sarah, those similar cases I mentioned in Chicago and Phoenix, the insurance investigator's signature appears on all of them. Just then, Sarah's phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Some fires are meant to stay buried. According to Sarah's later statement to police, that same evening, her apartment building experienced a power outage that lasted several hours, though neighboring buildings remained unaffected. Sarah immediately calls Detective Ray Foster, a veteran investigator who worked the original factory fire case. "Ray, I need to show you something. The Morrison factory fire, OSHA found evidence it wasn't an accident." That evening, they meet at Sarah's apartment. She shows him the photos of the welded exit door, the insurance documents, and the archived firefighter testimony. Detective Foster examines the evidence, his expression growing darker. "Sarah, I remember this case clearly. It was only 7 years ago. There were things that bothered me then, but the fire marshal ruled it accidental, case closed." "What bothered you?" Foster pulls out a worn file folder. First, the burn patterns. For an electrical fire, the damage was unusually concentrated in exit routes. Second, the owner William Morrison was surprisingly calm during questioning, like he expected it. He continues, "But here's what really stuck with me. 3 days after the fire, Morrison filed an insurance claim that was already prepared, pre-written, just needed dates filled in." Sarah's heart races. "So you suspected insurance fraud?" "I suspected, but couldn't prove it. And then," Foster hesitates, "then I was reassigned to another case. My captain said the fire investigation was sensitive and needed federal oversight. Federal investigators. They showed up once, interviewed Morrison, then declared the case closed. I never saw their report." Sarah shows him the audio fragments. Foster listens intently to the scratchy recording of trapped workers and the mysterious footsteps. "Ray, Jake said there are similar cases in Chicago and Phoenix. Same insurance investigator involved." Foster's expression changes. "Wait, what did you say about other cities?" "Chicago and Phoenix. Same pattern, factory fires, welded exits, high insurance payouts." Foster reaches for his phone. "Sarah, I need to make some calls. If this is part of a multi-state insurance fraud operation." After 20 minutes of calls, Foster hangs up with a grim expression. "I've got some disturbing information. Chicago PD reports a textile factory fire in 1993, 6 dead, exits allegedly blocked due to what appears to be safety negligence. Phoenix has what appears to be a similar case from 1997, 4 dead, involving a different insurance company and different circumstances." So this was a pattern, similar outcomes, but the investigations suggest separate cases with different causes. However, what's documented about Detroit is more troubling. There are signs this was deliberately planned rather than simple negligence. "What do you mean?" Foster shows her Chicago and Phoenix reports. In those cities, the blocked exits appear to result from cost-cutting measures and safety violations. But Detroit shows evidence of intentional manipulation. Someone specifically targeted this factory for fraud. Just then, Sarah's apartment lights go out. In the darkness, they hear footsteps in the hallway outside her door and the sound of someone trying the door handle. Foster immediately calls for backup, while Sarah grabs her service weapon. According to the police report filed that night, they heard what appeared to be footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment, followed by sounds at the door handle. "This suggests someone may be trying to stop our investigation," Foster tells his backup team when they arrive. 2 hours later, with the building secured by patrol officers, they decide the safest approach is to confront Michael Morrison directly with legal representation present. They arrange to meet at Morrison Group headquarters the following morning, with Detective Foster officially requesting Morrison's attorney be present. Michael Morrison, 36, impeccably dressed, meets them in his executive conference room along with his corporate attorney, David Chen. "Detective Foster, Miss Miller, my lawyer advised me to hear what you have to say." Sarah places photos of the welded door on the conference table. "Mr. Morrison, OSHA found this during their safety inspection of your old factory site." Michael examines the photos, his face showing genuine shock. His attorney whispers something to him before Michael responds. "I'm not sure what you expect me to say. I was only 29 when that fire happened and barely involved in day-to-day operations." Foster leans forward. "Michael, we have evidence that emergency exits were deliberately sealed before the fire. 8 people died because they couldn't escape, and this appears to be part of a multi-state insurance operation." Michael's attorney interrupts. My client had limited involvement in the family business in 1995. He can't be held responsible for decisions made by his late father. Sarah plays the archived firefighter testimony. This shows emergency exits were deliberately blocked and Captain Morrison's report was ignored. Michael listens to the testimony about blocked exits, his expression growing increasingly disturbed. After consulting with his attorney, he speaks carefully. You know what? Since my father's death in 1999, certain things have troubled me about that fire. Both Sarah and Foster lean forward. Michael continues, with his attorney nodding approval. In my father's final weeks, he made some unusual statements. He kept saying he'd been manipulated by someone who claimed to be helping. What exactly did he tell you? Foster asks. Michael glances at his attorney before continuing. According to my father, 3 days before the fire, he was approached by someone claiming to be an insurance investigator. This person allegedly told him that arson was being planned, but promised he could minimize the consequences. Sarah's voice tightens. Minimize. 8 people died. Michael's attorney places a hand on his client's arm, but Michael continues. That's exactly what never made sense to me. My father believed this investigator would ensure worker safety, but clearly, he gestures to the photos. That didn't happen. Do you have any documentation about this investigator? Foster asks. Michael's attorney produces a folder. My client has been working with me to understand his father's business dealings since We found this among William Morrison's personal effects. Inside is a business card, V. Cole, risk assessment specialist, but with a phone number that, according to phone company records they later obtained, was disconnected within weeks of the fire. Foster examines the card. Michael, did your father ever mention other locations where this Cole operated? Michael looks to his attorney, who nods. According to my father's notes, this Cole person mentioned having worked on similar assessments in what he described as Chicago and Phoenix. At the time, my father assumed he meant routine insurance evaluations. Not arson and murder, Sarah states grimly. Michael's attorney speaks carefully. My client wants to emphasize that his father appears to have been deceived by someone who presented himself as legitimate insurance personnel. Mr. Disappearance personnel. Morrison Sr. may have been a victim of fraud rather than a perpetrator. Foster stands up. Michael, we're going to need everything you have on this V. Cole, and we'll need you to testify. I'll do whatever it takes. Those 8 workers deserve justice, and so do their families. As they prepare to leave, Michael adds quietly, Sarah, I know this doesn't bring your mother back, but I want you to know I've been secretly funding workplace safety improvements in Detroit for years. It was the only way I could live with my father's mistake. 2 years of investigation follows. Working with FBI specialists in insurance fraud, they focus specifically on the Detroit case and Vincent Cole's local operations. The breakthrough comes when handwriting analysis connects the Detroit business card to Cole's legitimate insurance work prior to 1992. Forensic evidence from the Detroit factory site, metal filings from the welded exit door matches Cole's fingerprints to his previous legitimate employment records. The investigation reveals Cole's method. He identified financially struggling factories, approached owners with fraudulent insurance consulting services, then executed deadly fires to steal the insurance payouts while making it appear the owner was complicit. While Chicago and Phoenix had similar tragic outcomes, investigators determined those were separate cases involving different forms of safety negligence and different perpetrators. Detroit represents Cole's unique and calculated insurance fraud scheme targeting the Morrison family business specifically. Vincent Cole is arrested in Tampa, Florida. The 68-year-old former insurance investigator is charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy specifically related to the Morrison Textile Factory case. During the trial, evidence reveals Cole's calculated scheme. He researched financially struggling businesses, approached the owners as a fake insurance consultant, manipulated them into believing they were part of a legitimate insurance arrangement, then executed deadly fires to steal the payouts while framing the business owners. The Morrison factory represents Cole's most elaborate and deadly fraud. While other cities had similar workplace safety tragedies, Detroit was the result of Cole's specific and premeditated criminal plan targeting the Morrison family. Michael Morrison testifies against Cole, revealing how his father William was manipulated into believing workers would be safely evacuated. William Morrison, prosecutors determine, was guilty of insurance fraud but not murder. Sarah testifies about finding her mother's bracelet near the welded emergency exit, evidence that Linda Miller had made it to safety, only to find her escape route blocked. The jury deliberates for just 4 hours. Vincent Cole receives 8 life sentences without possibility of parole. At Cole's sentencing, Sarah addresses the court. "My mother, Linda Miller, was a kind, hard-working person who trusted that her workplace would keep her safe. Vincent Cole betrayed that trust in the cruelest way possible." Judge Patricia Hoffman's ruling states, "This defendant committed one of the most callous crimes this court has seen, turning workplace safety into a death trap for financial gain." The Morrison Memorial Garden opens 1 year later. 8 trees are planted, each bearing a plaque with a victim's name and photo. Sarah plants her mother's tree, a flowering dogwood that blooms every spring. Michael Morrison establishes a $2 million fund for workplace safety education, managed jointly with the Detroit Fire Department. Sarah continues working as a firefighter, now specializing in fire prevention and building safety inspections. "Mom taught me that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences," she says. "I carry that lesson into every building I inspect." This story isn't just about 8 factory workers. It's about how corporate greed can turn trusted institutions into instruments of death. When safety regulations become inconveniences and human lives become acceptable losses for profit, sometimes justice takes 7 years to arrive, but when it does, it validates every person who refused to accept it was just an accident as an answer. What would you do if you suspected your workplace wasn't safe? Would you speak up, even if it might cost your job? Would you keep searching for truth, even when everyone tells you to let it go? The 8 workers didn't die in vain. They live on in every safety regulation strengthened, every emergency exit kept clear, every worker who goes home safely to their family. Vincent Cole's crime was calculated and cruel, but Sarah Miller's determination was stronger. Her message still echoes, "Don't let them tell you it was just an accident. Keep asking questions, keep demanding answers." In Detroit's industrial district, they don't make textiles anymore, but they do make something more valuable: safer workplaces, and a promise that no worker should ever find their escape route locked when they need it most. Sarah visits her mother's memorial tree every November 12th, and every year it blooms a little brighter, reminding everyone that truth, like spring, always finds a way to emerge.